Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining today's webinar. I'm just going to give us a couple minutes so we can wait for additional participants to join. All right, looks like we have quite a few joiners. Thank you guys for joining today's webinar. Today, our webinar is going to be focused on absence management in Personio. This is kind of the sequel to the attendance webinar from a couple weeks ago. So yeah, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and start the presentation. So 1 second. All right. So today we have my colleague Mona joining us from the product team. She is a product manager who focuses on absences and is our product expert. So at the end of today's webinar, she is going to be able to support us by answering any questions that you might have about this product. We also have Will, who is my colleague on the customer success team. He's a customer success manager and will be able to support us on chat and for any technical challenges that we might have today. All right. So before we kick off today's webinar, I really want to get a better idea from you about your experiences with absences and time offs or in creating time off in Personio. So to kick things off, I'd love to understand how confident you feel when setting up time off and absences in Personio. The second question that I'd love to understand as well is how confident do your employees feel when requesting time off in Personio? And then also, do you use automated workflows in Personio to manage your time off and absences? Great. Thank you everyone for participating. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll and share the results with you so you can take a look as well. But we can see that there are quite a few people who feel feel somewhat confident, but also some that feel very confident, and then some people who feel less confident. So we have a good fluctuation. So what we're going to do is go over the full product just so that you guys can get an overview. And then for those people who are very familiar with the product, I think the Q&A will be a great opportunity for you to share the questions that you do have so that we can answer them live today. All right, and then on the topic of your employees feeling confident, there's also quite fluctuation when it comes to this. So it's good to hear that there are some who feel rather confident and that it's easy for them to log on to Personio and yeah, and book those holidays. For the employees that do feel less confident, we do have some articles to support them so that they can get used to it, but also we'll go over some tips today so that they can exercise better using Personio. And then the last question was, do you use automated workflows in Personio to manage your time off? And we also have quite some fluctuation. So we'll walk through how you can use workflows in Personio using the automation section in order to enhance your usage of that. All right, so I'll stop sharing for now and we'll move on to the next thing where we're going to go over the agenda. So what we're going to do today and what you can expect from today's session. So in today's session, we're going to walk through the process of setting up time off policies within Personio. So really looking at the creation phase. Then we're going to go into the process of requesting employees or requesting absences or time off from an employee perspective. And then we'll hop into the manager's perspective to see how it looks to approve of a time off request. And then we'll go into a few best practices of how to use the different elements of Personio in order to enhance the absence management. And then we'll go into a live Q&A session with Mona. All right. I also wanted to note that we have a Slido. This Slido will help you guys, or will be there so that you guys can ask your questions. You'll also be able to upvote questions. So the way we've handled this in the past is that for the top upvoted questions, those are the questions that we'll review first. And then if we have time permits, then we'll be able to review all the questions. But if we don't have enough time, then we'll go ahead and send the answers to you guys in a follow-up email. All right, so another thing I wanted to quickly note is a future product update about the absences or time off tool, where you'll be able to use the new features which allow you to or basically what we're doing is we're building in different market templates for 24 different countries. And because it can get sometimes very complex to update time off policies and align them with these like statutory requirements for the different locations, we've created these templates to help you, one, reduce the time it takes to create the time off policies, but also make it more in line with what is compliant with the local regulations. All right. So now I'm going to hop into the demo account and then we will walk through the creation process. Okay, so we are in my demo account. Firstly, what I wanted to show you, and actually, if you guys wouldn't mind, like just letting me know if you guys can see the screen okay. It's large enough for you. Perfect, thank you. Great. So in the Personio page, we would go into, or first of all, let me just explain that as an employee, you will be able to see the time off and attendance tab just here. But today, what we're first going to do is set up time off. So to do this, we'll go into the settings section and we're going to hop into the time off and attendance section. You'll see that there are different elements to it and all are pretty interconnected as well. So a couple weeks back, we would have had the attendance webinar where you would have created work schedules for your employees. And we would also have bank holidays, which are connected to your employees' workplace. And then these also play a role in time off and when the time off will be acknowledged. So to start, we're going to hop into the time off tool. And here you'll be able to see that we have many different time off types. These time off types allow us to categorize what the type is. And then with our new setup, you'll also be able to create different time off policies within the time off types. And so the general rule for the time off type will be quite basic, allowing you to have more in-depth and specific rules depending on regional differences or workplace differences. So it becomes more agile with the ability to have more time off policies. So the time off types are what will be displayed to the employees if they have access to the time off. This is what they'll be able to book those periods with. And then we have the policies within them. So to start, we're going to add a time off type. And this will just be an example. So for today, we're going to create a time off type for the development day. So my organization would like to have one development day allocated to each employee. This will be a day that they can explore whatever topic they want to explore to improve, their development. So I'm going to name this development day. You can use a custom ID. The custom ID will be beneficial if you are reporting. We can select a specific color just to make it easier from a visualization perspective. We can select a category. These categories are connected to either markets, or if you're covering multiple markets with this time off type, then we can select this. So for this example, we're going to choose other paid leave. And then we can select the time unit. So you can either select the time unit of days or hours. It really just depends on how you want your employees to schedule the time off. So if you select days, this will allow employees to track it based on one full day or a half day. And then for hours, it'll be based on hours. So if they needed to take an appointment for just 2 hours and you wanted to give them that option, then they can also do that with the hours entitlement. And then there's the option to consider time track during time off of this type as overtime. So for example, if the employee is expected or required to work during this time off, so for example, if they're traveling for business or if they're working from home, then we would not consider this time off as overtime. But if they are, for example, are not required to work and they end up taking like booking the time off, then we would consider this as time tracked as overtime. So for example, if they're working during time booked off like sick leave or their paid holidays, then they would be reallocated that time as overtime. So I'm going to select yes for this option, and then we will create. All right. So now that we have the time off type created, we are going to add a specific policy. This is a requirement with the time off type. So in order for any employee to then book a day off, you need to have a policy within the time off type, but they also need to be allocated that policy as well. So to start, we're going to add a policy. And here's where we can get really nitty gritty when it comes to the policy rules, when it comes to calculating the entitlement and whatnot. So I'll walk you through that in just a second. So to start, we'll say development day. And then we are going to allocate which period it's valid on. So you have a couple options. So basically this allows you to say, okay, if this day is booked on these days, then it is going to be considered a time off. If it's not booked on these days, then it's not going to be considered a time off. So for example, if an employee then books some time off on let's see here. If they book time off on on their work schedule, so the days that they're required to work, and you've also selected excludes bank holidays, that means that if the employee books time on a bank holiday, it means that that bank holiday won't be deducted from their balance. So for this example, I'm going to use excluding bank holidays. We could then also allow a half-day request or not allow a half-day request if it's a daily proration or a daily time unit. So for this, I'm going to say yes, and then we can also mark if a certificate is required and from how many days off. So for example, this is sometimes used for sick leave certificates. So if someone has been off for 3 days, then a required sick note will be required. So they'll need to upload this into their Personio and they will be flagged, and HR will also, and the management team will be able to see that they're missing this document that is required. Sometimes this is also helpful for jury duty. So perhaps on the first day of jury duty, then it is required that they have a note that they are absent because of this. So this could be helpful for you depending on your time off policy. And then you can also mark if a substitute is required. This is completely dependent on the team or on what you guys think is fit. So sometimes people will put optional, but it's really completely dependent. If you do have a substitute required, the substitute has to approve. And then there's also the second requirement stating that the substitute request, if they do try to book this time off at the same time, then they'll be blocked. And you can mark that this is the case or not the case. And then we will go into the policy related settings. So this is completely contributing to how entitlement works. So if you have a specific number of days that are going to be allocated to this employee, whether that limit is going to be allocated or not, or if it's completely open and they can book as many days as they want, then we will say no. So for this example, I'm going to say yes, because we only want to give the employee one development day. So with that, an additional rules will pop up. So with this, we have the ability to select country-specific entitlement rules. So basically, the system takes into consideration the location that you're at and will give you recommendations as to what might be the best policy based on the region. And so for this one, actually, like for example, we would use this for the Netherlands. I can show you an example later, but when it comes to paid holidays, if we select Netherlands, it'll give us the option to also select whether we have statutory and non-statutory days included in that paid holiday type. But if we use the UK, then it'll have those country-specific rules. In this scenario, I'm going to select UK just so you can see what it looks like. So we'll go into next, and then you can see that there are recommendations throughout the creation process based on the country that I've selected. So for our example, I'm selecting one entitlement day, and then I go into the other granting rules. So which day will this accrual start on? Will it start on the day that the employee became an employee, or will it start on a specific day of the year? A lot of organizations will choose January 1st as being that accrual start date. And then we also have the granting method. So how frequently do we grant these entitlement times? We can select annually, half yearly, quarterly, or monthly. And then, of course, that's based on the specific date. We also have temporary granting modes at the start of employment. So, for example, if we select yes, and we don't want to grant our employees a day until they pass probation, then we can select 1 day in 6 months. Then we can go into next. And then we have the proration. So these are all the calculations that will calculate how much an employee has depending on when they start, when they leave, or if they're a part-time employee, because not everyone should be receiving the same number of development days depending on these. So this will create a calculation. So for example, we have the option to have no proration, so every employee receives the full entitlement amount. Then we have the daily proration, which allows them to receive it based on the day of the month that they're joining the organization. So it's probably the most accurate form of proration that you can choose. And then we have the monthly proration, which will allow like the remaining months of the year in this entitlement period, those will be the months that they're allocated days for. So the calculation or proration calculation is based on monthly proration. All right, and then the same applies for the proration at the end of employment. You'll basically receive those 3 options as well. And then we also have the proration for part-time employees. So this is really important because it is allowing your part-time employees to get the specific number of days based on the number of days that they work that's allocated in their working schedule. So one thing as well to note is that you can select no proration and just give them all the entitlement days, but you can also prorate it based on the weekly working days. So for example, if we have an employee that works 3 days a week and they work 5 hours a week, then with the proration based on weekly working days, they will receive the proration calculation will be based on the number of days they're working. So 3 out of 5 days. And then if we were to select proration based on weekly working hours, then it would be calculated based on the fact that they work 15 hours out of 40, which would be the full-time equivalent. So it would be calculated based on those hours as opposed to days. All right. And this is also really helpful because basically when you have this set, you don't have to have 2 different policies depending on if they're a part-time employee or if they're a full-time employee. You can assign everyone to the same policy and it'll be calculated accordingly. All right. So moving down to the rounding rule, this is also quite helpful, depending on if you require the rounding rule. So if you have no rounding rule, it will stay the same. If you round up to the next 0.5 or above, then it'll round up. If you round up to the nearest half number, then it'll round up. And then if you round up to the nearest whole number, it'll round up to the nearest whole number. It'll never round down. It'll always stay as is or allow you to offer the option to round up. All right, so then the last option, sorry, we have 2 more options before we review the summary. We have this option to allow carryover. So in some organizations, they allow employees to carry over a specific number of days. So when we select this option, we're given the different additional options to allow this. So for our example, we're going to allow them to roll 1 development day over for the next 3 months. So we're going to set that, meaning that that 1 day is going to expire 3 months after the January 1st entitlement cycle start date. And then therefore it's going to expire on March 31st. All right. Then we'll go into the next option, which is to reward extra entitlement based on tenure. This is quite helpful if you want to reward people who have stayed at the company for a long time. Very helpful for paid holidays, but sometimes we can also use it for other holiday types or other time off types as well. So for this example, we are going to reward people who have worked at the organization for 5 years, an additional 2 days to improve their development. So we're going to say yes, we're going to select a recurring reward type. Or actually you can select either option. So for example, after 4 years. They say 4 years, we'll add 2 days. And then you can continue to add additional rules depending on what's relevant to your policies. All right. And then we also have the option to grant or when to grant the reward. So we can prorate it based on the anniversary date as well. All right, then, oops, here we go. Oh, I need to delete this rule and then we'll move on to the next. And here we are given a nice summary overview of the time off policy, and we can just review it and confirm and create it. Okay, so now we have that, and that's stored just below here on the time policies area. And you can create as many as needed, depending on the time off type. As well, we can continue to edit it as needed until someone is assigned to the time off policy. And so how do we assign people to the time off policy? So there are a couple ways to do it. You can either go into the individual employee's profile to do that, or we can assign it in bulk. So what I'll do is, well, actually, I wanted to kind of walk you through what the dependencies are when it comes to time off types. So the first thing that you'll need to do is you'll need to assign it to people. This way, people will have it displayed in their time off so that they'll have that option when they look to book that. Another thing is that you need to choose time off approvers. So you'll have the ability to select the order in which people need to book time off. So for example, if the requirement for sick leave is that the HR admin needs to approve of the time off, then that will be the step that you set. But if for paid time off, they have the manager approve of it before HR, or HR is not included in that step at all, or that process at all, then you can select that it's just the supervisor that needs to approve of the time off. All right, and then there's also the option to set the team calendar. So this will allow employees to have an overview of that time off for their team. This is quite helpful when it comes to aligning on the appropriate time to take time off. The employees won't see exactly what the time off type is, but they'll at least be able to see that it is blocked on their colleague's calendar and that it may or may not be okay for them to book that time off. This helps when it comes to planning processes, and just in general team alignment. And then we also have the access rights. And this is very important because in order for the employee to see the absence policy, they also need to have the correct access rights set. And you'll have the three options to define what level of access rights they have to book that time off, whether they can just view it, whether they can propose, or if they can edit it entirely. So you'll be able to define that as well. And that is a mandatory step in order for the employees to see it. All right, so let's see what's next. Let's go ahead and go into an individual employee's account so we can assign a time off policy. So for this example, I'm going to go into Elena's profile, and we're going to go into the time off section and look at the unassigned policies that we have. We see the development day, which we've just created, and we can assign that policy to her. So here we'll choose development date. We'll say from hire date, because there might be tenure-based rules that are applying, or as we know, there are tenure-based rules. So it's important that she also gets to benefit from those. So we'll update the policy, and now we can see that she has 3 days. All right, this is also a really helpful overview as well, because from here we can also see the the history. So we can see what she currently has for her balance. We can see the activity as to why she has that balance. So we can see the tenure-based rules are all incorporated in here as well. And then we can also see the policy that she's attached to. And you can do this for every single absence type. So now that it's assigned, we can see it here. Elena will only be able to see her assigned absence types as long as her access rights are set. All right, there's also the option to do this in bulk. So to do this, we would go to the people list. And this is quite a handy list. So the first thing I wanted to point out is that when it comes to the people list, you can create saved views. So if you had certain columns that you wanted to revisit and certain filters that you wanted to revisit in the future, and you're constantly resetting those filters and columns, you can just save the view so that you always have a shortcut to view it. So for this one, I have the paid holidays just here, so I can make sure that I understand who has those specific paid holidays. All right. If I wanted to, I can also hop into a default view and I can select all the employees that I have in my organization. This gives me the ability, once I select all of these employees, it gives me the ability to change the absence policy. So I simply go here, select the absence type that I want to consider. So if I wanted to consider the development day and assign it to everyone in the organization, I can do that. And then I can select development day and select the effective day. It gives you three options to choose from: the hire date, the start of the current period, or the start of the next entitlement period. So for example, the start of the current period now would be January 1st of 2025, and the next entitlement period would be January 1st, 2026. That's crazy to say, but that is where we are. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to cancel this and not allow for that, just to keep the demo account clean. All right, so then the next thing that we want to do, once we're there, let's see here, I'm going back in to the settings and the time off. Okay, the other thing that I quickly wanted to show you is on the part of choosing time off approvers. So this is what I was explaining earlier. So for all of the different time off types, we have approval processes. So for example, for paid holidays, it's always the supervisor that's approving it. For sick days, we might have employees with the role of super admins who need to approve it. So those are things that you can set to yourself. And then I'm going to go back into the time off types as well to show you how you can then allow to set the team calendar. So if we go here, you'll be able to see this is the absence calendar, and we can select exactly which days employees can see of their colleagues. All right, now the next part of today's demo is going to be going over the employee's perspective of how they are going to request time off. So if you go into the organization list, I'm just going to choose Boris, for example. So Boris is, we're going to impersonate him and look at it from his perspective. All right, so now that we're on Boris's home screen, we can see that he has a couple options to book time off here. You can also go to the time and attendance here and book time off as well. But this side widget allows you to see the team calendar as a whole. So say Boris is looking to book some holiday in the next couple months and he wants to have an overview of when his colleagues are leaving or are going to be working, and he can see, okay, actually, next week, or next week is going to be a little tough because he has 3 colleagues that are working that day. If he were to request that time off, for example, as paid holiday time or whichever, he will also see that this time conflicts with some other people on his team. And now he can see that overview at a glance. Another benefit is that, say he has a limited number of days off, what we'll do is we'll try to book maybe 3 weeks off for Boris. So we're going to go from the 1st to the 23rd, and we see that if I were to book this time off, that I have an issue. My issue is that I don't have enough days and that I only have a certain number of days left. And so I will be in the negative if I do book this time off. So this allows Boris to understand at a glance what those conflicts are and how he'll need to adjust his requested time off based on that. Another thing as well, he'll have the option to comment. And then since we selected the option to select half days, he'll also have the option to do that. So now that as Boris, I've seen that these days conflict, I'm going to select another 4 days, which leaves me 3 days to book holidays in the future. So I'm going to send this request to my manager. All right, so now I've submitted this. Now I'm going to log out as Boris and hop into his manager's profile. So I'll hop into the people list one more time, and I'll go down to his manager, Scarlett's profile. And here we'll impersonate Scarlett. All right. So now that we're on Scarlett's homepage, she'll see the inbox notification that Boris has requested paid holidays. So as Scarlett, I can take a look at this. I want to review this and take a look at the overview on the time and attendance page. And I want to just make sure that it isn't conflicting with any team members that are absolutely essential for our business to function. So I see, okay, it works well. That's perfect. I'm going to approve of Boris's holiday time. Now the time is approved and this is also in green, so we know that all is okay and Boris is going to go on holiday very shortly. All right, so I'm going to log out for now so we can see my screen once again. All right, so going back to the home screen, there's a couple things that I wanted to show you. Okay, let's see here. Since I am the super admin and I had the sick leave super admin approval process updated, I can see that there is one employee that has some sick days and he has not submitted a certificate. So I can look into this and understand a little bit more about who it was and what they need to add. So if I wanted to, I can request this from him and add the file myself, or I can simply nudge Eddie that he needs to add the sick certificate. All right, now on to, so we've seen it from the employee's perspective. We've also seen it from the manager's perspective. Now, what would be helpful is to see other ways and other areas within Personio that also are interconnected with the time off tool. So we are going to quickly hop into the analytics area. So if we look at the analytics area, we have some pre-built metrics tables, which will show us more insights into our time off. So this is really helpful if you're trying to understand how frequently is my workforce absent? What are the reasons that they're absent? Who are the departments that are impacted by these different absence types? We can adjust all of these things, like from which period do I want to dive into, which segment do I, or in which ways do I want to segment this data? And are there any specific filters that would be helpful for me to hone in on? I also wanted to show you one beneficial thing when it comes to the reports, and this is creating a custom report. So if you are looking to understand the time off balance, there's also this option to create a report using the classic builder. And basically we would be able to create a balance report using the point in time report. So basically what I'm going to do is say that I want to create a custom report based on today's information. So based on today, what is the balance of these specific employees? I could then use the table columns to pull in the absence attributes. For example, we have a lot of data in the paid holidays for balance. So I'm going to pull that information, click into next, select the conditions that every active employee should be added to this list. And now I can see what the balance days are. So for example, if I wanted to get an idea as to who has a lot of absence dates, it's already June and they haven't taken any days off. Who do I need to nudge to take some holidays off? All right, so that's on the reporting end or the analytics aspect. And then next we're going to quickly hop into the automations. So going into automations, you can see our automations page with all of the different widgets that show us a high-level overview of how those are progressing. I'm going to click into create workflows. And if you click into time off, there are several different time off workflows that you can create. And if you're not familiar with creating workflows, essentially what happens is you create a trigger within Personio. So some action or something that's happening in Personio that will trigger an action. So trigger a notification, for example. So we have several different templates already created. This could be helpful in sending you a reminder or sending you an update as to what needs to happen based on the trigger that has happened in Personio. So, for example, something that people often use is the long-term sick leave for Germany. So if we click into this, it'll give us an overview of what this policy or what this workflow looks like and what the triggers are. So for this one, the workflow starts when an employee has accumulated a number of sick days over a certain amount, the limit that we're going to define just here. And this is what has happened over the past 365 days. So we can set those conditions. So if we wanted to say that they have booked more than 30 days or 30 days, we can say that, or 35 days, we can also say that. We can also define what the time off type is. So for this, I'm going to specify that it is sick days that we want to define. All right. Give me 1 second because my screen is not large enough. Okay, I'm going to exit out of this because I have one that's already activated, so we can hop into this. So this is the long-term sick leave, and then we can see what those rules are, that the country of employment should be a specific country, and then we can also look into the notification that is received. We can define who those recipients should be, what the title of the sick leave is, or what the message should be, and it'll also trigger who the absent person is. And then we're going to go back into the create workflow as well. Another helpful one is that when employees are, like when the new year comes and we have carryover days enabled, we might want to use the expiring holiday reminder to notify employees that they need to take and book those expiring dates. So we can schedule the start date as to when that is going to happen. And then we can define what the message looks like and who should receive this. So for this, we can say all employees receive this notification, update it here, and then we can select to save and activate it. And then there's another helpful option when it comes to updating or updating on upcoming time off periods. This is also helpful for if you wanted to, like, if an employee has already booked time off and you want to get an understanding of when that the time that they're returning from this leave type, then that's also possible through a workflow like this. Okay, I'm just keeping an eye on time, and I realize that we don't have much time left. So there's one more thing that I wanted to show you, and that has to do with an employee going on leave. So I wanted to quickly show you what that process looks like and how that's also connected to the time off area. So for example, I'm going to go into Haley Allen's profile, and I want to define her as someone who is no longer going to be active because she's going to be on parental leave. So we are going to go into here, click on the three dots, schedule the leave, and then here will be prompted all of the details that are necessary in order to prompt this leave. So for example, we can choose what the leave type is, and then we can choose the start date, the end date, and any comments necessary. And then it'll prompt that when the date begins, she'll be on leave. For example, you can also do this for if there's like a sabbatical leave as well. All right, there. Think I've shown you pretty much everything. So what we'll do now is I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and hop into the next slide, which is the Q&A with Mona. So let me just quickly go into this area. So if you have any more questions, feel free to scan the QR code or go into slido.com and enter the code, and we can go into the Q&A. And Mona, I will give the floor to you.
Thank you, Melissa. So I'm here answering questions, and we do have one question, which is it possible to add to the template long-term sick leave the time frame of a calendar year, not only the last 365 days? I'm not sure if I'm getting the question right. The template long-term sick leave, I assume, refers to the functionality schedule leave from the employee profile, and there is a way to select specific dates that are not necessarily tied to calendar year, but can be also the last calendar year or this calendar year. I'm not sure if I'm understanding correct the question. Please, if you want, the only message currently in our Slido, you can also clarify there again, and I'll answer more specifically if you want to specify. Other than that, there's currently no question. Okay, now there's another question. Can we explicitly choose if an absence is paid or unpaid and have it reflected in the salary tab accordingly? So as of today, there is no connection between what we have in a absence period and the salary tab. So there's whatever absence period you're creating, there's no impact on salary. There is this one exception if you choose to create a long-term leave period from the employee profile, then there's this hard-coded rule that the salary is prorated for the time this long-term leave is scheduled. That is the status of today. But we're actually having good news here. Currently, we are working on more specific policy rules. That means that in the future, like from the end of this year approximately, you will be able per absence policy, for example, for parental leave or for sabbatical, to select actually what impact should this period, a parental leave period or sabbatical period, have on other areas, including salary. So you will be able to choose should a parental leave period impact the salary? And if so, yes. Should it be paused completely? Should it be prorated by 50% and so on? So in summary, currently it's not possible yet to define if an absence period should have impact on salary, but this will come later that year. Is there an option to restrict paid leave bookings to the accrued amount so employees can go into negative balance that rolls over to the next year? Currently, it is absolutely possible to have a balance going into negative. That means that if you, for example, at the end of the year have 5 days left, but booking 10 days for the Christmas holiday starting this year and overlapping into next year, this possibility to go into negative makes it possible to book that period already. Currently, we do not have something in place that is something like a predicted balance because ideally, if you're scheduling a leave period or absence period next year, you would want to calculate that against the entitlement you will have by then, because then the balance, in fact, won't be negative anymore. But this is nothing we can do currently. That means if we would restrict balances going into negative, most employees would not be able to book their Christmas holidays today because obviously the entitlement of next period is not there yet, and employees would go into negative. That being said, this is currently not an option to prevent balances to go into negative, but also this is something we plan. We don't know yet if it will fall into this year still, but somewhere in H1 2026, there will be a possibility to decide and to configure on your own whether you want absence balances to become negative or not, depending on your company setup. Okay, if I unassign absence policy to be able to edit and then reassign this same but updated policy, will the historic date be retained or it disappears? So if you're removing the assignment of all policies or of a specific policy to make edits to that policy, currently what happens is the whole employee history of those policy assignments is removed, it's empty, and you then start again assigning that from higher date. That is what's currently going on, but also we're working on something as we speak that allows editing assigned policies, meaning that you don't have to go in and unassign them first, but you can actually go in as edit a assigned policy, and then a new version is created of it that is then assigned on the day you actually do this change. That means you save a lot of work from, first of all, removing the policy assignment for everyone, update it, and then assign again. This is something that will come still this year. Yeah, I think that is answering the question here. Are there more? I think these have been all questions so far.
Great. Thank you guys for asking your questions. It is such a great opportunity as well to ask Mona because she is on the product team and is very familiar with building out what the future of absences and time off in Personio looks like. So feel free to continue to send us your questions. What we'll do as well is if you did have any questions or any specific workflows that you need to work through, please contact our customer support team. They are happy to help walk you through what that looks like. You can also request a screen share with them to walk through those processes to ensure that everything is set up properly. As long as you're an account owner, you'll have the ability to contact our support team. Great. All right. So I'm going to hop back in as long as there's no extra questions that are popping up in just the next minute. Then I'll hop into the last portion of our webinar. Thank you so much, Mona. Okay. So the last part, quickly, before we get to the last slide, I just would love to understand your feedback when it comes to this specific webinar. So give me just 1 second, and I am going to send a poll, which will ask you how you found this. Okay, oops, let's see here. Can you see the poll? Please give me a thumbs up if you can see the poll. Perfect. We'd love to hear from you just because our webinar format is an ever evolving format, which is really something that is defined by your feedback. So please feel free to quickly share some of your thoughts with us. I'll give you guys 1 minute and then we'll hop into the next slide. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close it right now. Thanks again for sharing that feedback, and then we'll go into the final slide for today. So what did we learn today? We learned how to set up absences and time off in Personio. We learned how to use the templates to, or how to create time off policies, and how there will be the future iterations of Personio that will allow you to quickly create time off policies using the country specific templates. And then, oops, then we also learned how to request and approve time off within Personio from both the employee and the manager's perspective. And then we also learned how we can, and that we can use workflow automations in order to streamline communication and triggers based on the time off specs or triggers that we have set in Personio. All right. With that, I just wanted to thank you all for attending today's webinar. I hope you guys found it helpful. And if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to our support team. They are really happy to help. And we look forward to inviting you all to more webinars, and we'll see you guys later.